We're continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, Siman Kuf Nun Dalet, the halachot of Bet Knesset, and we're up to Sif Vav, and of Mem Bet Amud Aleph of the regular prince of Mishnah Berurah, and writes the Shulchan Aruch, En osin miteva kiseh lesefer Torah, aval mutar la'asod miteva gdola ketana. You cannot take something that has a higher level of kedusha and lower it in its level of kedusha, but you could make the same thing different sizes, because that's not a different level of kedusha. It's just a different size. It can make it beautiful, more beautiful than you make a small one out of a big one, as needed in the particular community. So therefore, you can't take a teva and make a kiseh out of it, and make a chair or a bench out of a teva that's made for Sefer Torah or Aron Kodesh, as we mentioned before. Teva could be referring to what we call bima, or it could be referring to what we call Aron Kodesh. And again, the kiseh also, we said before in Sif Gimel, that is also considered Tashmishei Kedusha, but it's a lower level of Tashmishei Kedusha, and therefore, because again, the Aron always hosts the Sefer Torah, and the kiseh is when they wanted for a short period of time to put the Sefer Torah on it, so it's more of a periodic usage of the Sefer Torah on it. So even though that they seem to be serving it in the same way, because one of them is kavua, one of them is permanent, and it's all the time, and the other one is periodic, it's still, you cannot lower that level of kedusha. So says the Mishnah Berurah, tevahu Aron Kodesh, ve'after kisehu gam ken tashmishei kedusha. Even the kiseh is considered tashmishei kedusha. Afilu achi asur. Even with that being said, it's still asur because one of them is permanent, munach batamid, and kiseh hu notin alav sefer Torah ela lif'amim. It's only periodically used, and therefore it would be a problem. Now, the different levels of tashmishei kedusha and changing from one to another, the Shulchan Aruch writes that there are many, the Ashkenazi Shulchan Aruch, he writes that there are many different chilukei deot and pratim, details of dinim over here, which require in real study, and therefore a person should ask a question and look into it before they make any of these decisions. You have to have a proper moreh hora'ah to paskin the shailas, and according to our minhag of the Sfaradim, that the Sefer Torah is always put in the Aron Kodesh, in the Teva, but it's not touching the Teva, because every Sefer Torah is sitting in its own box. Then it's put in the Aron. So therefore, the box is Tashmishei Kedusha, the Aron is Tashmish, the Tashmish Kedusha. According to that, maybe a person could make an Aron Kodesh into a kiseh, into a teva, because again, into rather a shulchan, because the teva, the Aron Kodesh, is not considered Tashmish Kedusha directly, it's Tashmish to Tashmish, and therefore maybe it's more lenient than the Ashkenazi Aron Kodesh. Now, by the way, that would also be a question whether or not you could turn an Ashkenazi Aron Kodesh into a Sephardi Aron Kodesh, because you're going from Tashmishei Kedusha to be Tashmish the Kedusha. So that's this does happen when a shul upgrades their Aron and they want to give their Aron Kodesh to a different shul. Sometimes I had this question a number of years ago, that the Teva that was designated and used originally for an Ashkenazi Sefer Torah, they wanted to now use it for a different minyan, for a Sephardi minyan, and that of course becomes a question, depending on if they had Tanai or not. Again, these are things that have to be asked and answered based on the case particular case by itself. Now, how about the amudim, the Etz Chaim of the Torah? Right, the Etz Chaim has the bottom part that you hold it to do Hakba for the Ashkenazi Sefer Torah, and then he has the top one. It's like the two parts of the wood of the Etz Chaim. Can you switch it from top to bottom, from bottom to top? Is that considered higher level of kedusha or not? So Kaf Chaim says Mikar Adin, it's not really higher level of kedusha. Push comes to shove, you could use it. It's not necessarily considered horadat kedusha because the same level of the kedusha, even with the fact that the right side of Sefer Torah could be different than the left side of Sefer Torah, and up and down maybe different aspects of kedusha, but halachically speaking, it's considered the same level. Fine. That being said, the Mishnah Berurah writes on the next part of Shulchan Aruch. Maran writes we read the first sentence. V'chen mutar la'asod mikiseh gadol kiseh katan, avar asur la'asod mimenu shraf raf. But the same thing is with the kiseh, that you could make a smaller bench, smaller chair from a bigger one. You could break that down and turn it into a smaller one, but you cannot make a shraf raf. You cannot make a small chair that would be considered a resting place for the feet, that would sit on a bigger chair and put your feet down on the shraf. Yeah, you cannot do that. V'chen mutar la'asod mi vilon gadol vilon katan. From parochet, a larger one, you could turn into a smaller one, or la'asod mimenu kis leSefer Torah, or you could make a cover for the Sefer Torah from it, but la'asod mimenu kis lechumash asur. But you cannot make a talit bag or a tefillin bag or a chumash bag out of the parochet. So says the Mishnah Berurah, why can't you make a cover, a bag for chumash? They have vilon meshamesh pamim leSefer Torah gufa. As we mentioned before, sometimes the vilon is they put the Sefer Torah on it, and therefore it has a higher level of kedusha. And chumash, even if it's made with glila, even if it's a roll-up chumash, kedushato kala mi Sefer Torah. The kedusha is much lower because only one chumash, even if it's written with diyo on a parchment and it's a scroll of a chumash bereshit, chumash shemot, still is not a kosher Sefer Torah. Therefore, is much less of a kedusha. You cannot lower the grade of the parochet. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'chol shken she'asur lichroch mapa shel Sefer Torah al hanevim. Of course, you cannot take the cover of Sefer Torah and cover the Nevi'im with it. Mapa she'porsin al shulchan asur lifros al ha'amud shelifnei hazan. And you can't take the see, the Ashkenazim especially, they have the Amud and they have the Bima. Bima is for Sefer Torah, and the Amud is for the Shaliach Tzibur. It's like a stender, and both of them have a cover, nice, beautiful velvet cover, whatever it is. You cannot take the, sometimes especially you see there's the part that's under the glass, and then there's the part that hangs down, right? So many times, if you take a look, in shuls, the part that's hanging down, especially in the corners, gets disintegrated and ruined. So every few years you want to change it, right? But the bima is larger than the amud, so therefore even the part that's underneath the glass cover by itself is enough material to make a cover for the shtender, for the amud. Can you turn that into the amud? I imagine, especially if you don't have glass, that the Sefer Torah actually touches the parchment itself, the Sefer Torah itself rests on this piece of cloth. Then, says the Mishnah Berurah, you cannot take that and make a cover for the amud of the Shaliach Tzibur, because one of them is Tashbishei Kedusha, the other one is just Tashbishei Mitzvah, maybe, right? So says the Ramah, this was the Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch until now. The Ramah adds, "Uparochet shanachnu tolin lifnei Aaron." the parochet that we have in front of the Aron hanging, Elo kedushat Aron. It doesn't have the same kedusha as Aron. Rak kedushat bet knesset. It just has the kedusha bet knesset. V'chen hakelunsaot shebot tolin parochet. The poles that you use for hanging the parochet by the Aron Kodesh is the same thing. It has kedushat bet knesset, but nothing more than that. Umikol makom asur las mem ha'etzim shemesamenim bo hakriya lechovat hayom. Even with all that said, you cannot make, you cannot make other purposes out of those poles in a way that brings down the kedusha. She'enan kedoshim kemohem, because they don't have a kedusha like the original usage. So that's considered that you're bringing it lower in kedusha, because they're not considered for beautifying Sefer Torah. The hand is not a beautifying of the Sefer Torah, and also is not a cover. It's just to show where you're holding, as you read. So the hand doesn't have kedusha really in it. Right? Rav Moshe Feinstein was asked the question. There's a machloket between two people. They asked Rav Moshe Feinstein. One of them wanted to put the yad, the hand, inside the Sefer Torah as you roll it to show where you are holding for next time, for the next kriya. Moshe Feinstein is very unhappy in the tshuva. He says, well, what's the she'ela even? He brings this Rama. He says the hand doesn't have kedusha, so you're putting that inside Sefer Torah. It's not considered for a sorach. Actually, if anything, it ruins it. You may scratch the otiot and drop some of the dios of the ink that's there, and therefore he says absolutely is asur to do that. Okay. So that being said, says the Mishnah Berurah, Elo kedushat Aron, the bizmanenu leolam ein notnin alav Sefer Torah. Parochet is never used in this day and age for putting the Sefer Torah on it, and therefore is not considered a tashmish of kedusha directly, because it's not meant to be hosting the Sefer Torah on it as a cover for underneath the Sefer Torah. Therefore, you could do parochet that's old. You could make a mapash al shulchan from that as well. There's no problem. Kaf HaChaim writes that nowadays we never put Sefer Torah on the parochet, and therefore you could even put the parochet, old parochet. You could make from it the cover for the shtender, for the amud of the chazan. As we mentioned before, you don't use the parchment, the cloth under the bima for the amud, but you could do it, says the Kaf HaChaim, from parochet, because parochet is less of a kedusha than the piece of cloth that's covering the bima. Fine. Sarich iyu lama nagu leporso lechupa lehatanim. He says sometimes you have a chuppah for chatanim that they take the parochet and they use it as a chuppah. Says, even though that it has kedushat bet knesset, you should not be doing that. And maybe the reason that they do it is because this is a minhag from the beginning. When you buy them, when you make the parochet, it's a tenai, built-in tenai, that we're going to use it for chupat chatanim when need be. And this that has kedushat bet knesset, even though that's just tashmish the kedusha, meaning the Aron Kodesh is tashmish kedusha, and the parochet is tashmish the kedusha. And if you have a Sfaradi Aron, then the Aron is tashmish the kedusha, and the parochet is tashmish the kedusha. It's like a 3 steps removed. Says the Mishnah Berurah, even with all of that being said, mikol makom, at the end of the day, is not any less from all the other furniture of Bet Knesset, which have the Kedusha of Bet Knesset itself, and therefore you should be very careful with it. But the rest of the Tashmish Kedusha, the second level removed, She'ena beBet Knesset, if they're not in Bet Knesset, like a tefillin, right? A bag of tefillin that you have, the plastic boxes as being Tashmish Kedusha, and the bag itself is Tashmish the Kedusha. In those cases, Ein bo Kedusha klal, doesn't have any Kedusha. You can't disgrace it, but it doesn't have any kedusha that you have to be very careful with. So it says the Mishnah Berurah, and the last comment of the Rema over here, that the hand, the yad that you show where you're holding a Sefer Torah as you do the Kriyat Torah has no kedusha. The Mishnah Berurah writes the reason is because it's not considered, as we mentioned, it's not considered noi, it's not beautifying the Sefer Torah, it's not considered a cover for Sefer Torah, right? It's just a practicality that you want to show people where you're holding. You can't touch the Sefer Torah with your finger, with your hand. And anyways, it's not so easy. So you have an extension, basically, to show the person that gets the aliyah, comes up to the Torah, to show him where we're holding. Because he has to read along, so that's what it is. So says the Mishnah Berurah, therefore, it's going to be lowering the level of kedusha when you use the poles for the parochet, which are the furniture of the Bet Knesset, and have kedushat Bet Knesset. Using them for a hand is lowering them in their kedusha. But nowadays there's a chain and you hang it on the Sefer Torah itself. Then and you make it out of kesef. It's nice and it's beautiful. So then it's considered Tashmish Kedusha already, and therefore it's mutar to make the Kulun Sa'im and turn it into the yad as well. Now the question that we're going to discuss next time is going to be whether or not you could put Pasul Sefer Torahs or parts of a Pasul Sefer Torah inside the Aron Kodesh where you keep your kosher Sefer Torah, or maybe that's considered lowering the level of Tashmish Kedusha, because this box is made, the Aron Kodesh is meant to serve the kosher Sefer Torah, and maybe you should not be able to put Sefer Haftarah inside there. How are you allowed to put Sefer Haftarah or parts of invalid, non-kosher parts of the parchments of the Sefer Torah, old Sefer Torahs? Maybe that should be a problem. It's something that Be'ezrat Hashem we will be discussing in the next shiur. Chazak Baruch.